Making Big Shifts, presented by Marketing Reboot, with your host, Josh Anderson.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Making Big Shifts by Marketing Reboot. I'm your host, Josh Anderson, where we talk to real entrepreneurs and real operators making real changes and the real results that followed. Today, we're excited to be joined by Michael Shapiro. He's the CEO of TAPinto and Hyperlocal News Network. So welcome, Michael.
Thanks so much for having me, Josh.
We're so glad to have you here. I know there's a lot that goes into TAPinto and Hyperlocal News Network. So do you want to give us, in your own words, what each of those do?
Sure. So at TAPinto, we're helping to fill local news deserts throughout the country by empowering local people to start local news sites in their community. We franchise them and provide all the back-end training, support, et cetera, for people to start a local news site in their community. At Hyperlocal News Network, that's where we help existing publishers. So people that already have a publication
Yeah.
who need help with their digital presence. Oftentimes it's, for example, a print newspaper that doesn't have an online site or doesn't have a good online site or would otherwise want to monetize their online site. It can also be for a community magazine, as well as even a one-off hyper-local news site where they're just not happy with their tech infrastructure and their support.
Okay. Very interesting. That's a good niche to fill right there. So making big shifts is truly about, in business and life, making these big decisions as you come to them in the fork in the road. And as the founder of both of these companies, obviously you saw a niche that was being underserved. So what led you to starting to, let's go to TAPinto. What led you to starting that and then building that out?
Yeah, well, TAPinto turned 17 last month.
Okay.
Uh, 17 years ago, I was an attorney in New York and I was commuting back and forth from my old hometown of New Providence, New Jersey. And we found out that my son, who was one at the time, today he's 18 and he's fine. But when he was one, we found out he needed open heart surgery. And that's what caused me to start TAPinto, because I wanted to do something where I could actually see my wife and son, do something I'd really like to do, and could do something that would help the community. And
Yeah.
so I started this local news site in New Providence, New Jersey. And when I started it, people thought I was crazy, but I started it. And then within a few weeks, people in our two neighboring towns reached out to me and they said, "Hey, we heard about this. Can you start this in our town?" And I did. And I soon found myself running 3 local news sites myself. And I left
Okay.
my job in New York to do it full time.
Yeah.
And my original vision was just to grow those 3 sites, their traffic, their revenue, their content. Over a period of about 3 years, I was able to build them to profitability. We were able to bring on a full-time editor, full-time reporter, but I kept getting more and more requests from people to expand to their town. And I had to say no, because I couldn't do any more
Yeah.
sites myself. And
Yeah.
so that's how I happened upon creating a franchise model for local news, because I was thinking, how could we scale it yet keep it really local? So in 2013, end of 2013, I came up with this idea of applying a franchise business model to local news, which had never been done before, and to my knowledge, has never been done since.
Yeah.
And we started to franchise TAPinto to people that wanted to start it in their own community.
Wow. That's really cool. Just from like different multiple income streams, I've looked at franchises for different things in the past. I've never once, like you mentioned, these are very rare when it comes about the news. This is now, you got me curious here. What are like what are the requirements to start one of these franchises?
Yeah. So on the franchising side, they need to do at least one original local news story a day. They have to be objective. They have to follow the Society of Professional Journalists ethics. That's on the journalism side. On the sales side, they work with the local businesses in their community.
Yeah.
So we train them in all aspects of the business. We provide all the infrastructure, all the support. We do their billing, credit card processing of their advertisers, provide them with an editable media kit, DocuSign for contracts, CRM, et cetera, so that they can focus on the news for their community and working with the local businesses
Yeah.
in their community. And we have a variety of different ways people can do it. Sometimes it's 2 people who do it together part-time in their community. Other times it's a person that wants to do it full-time in their community. Sometimes it's someone who just buys the franchise and then they bring on people who do the content and the sales side. So it's a very flexible model. And that's how we kind of developed it, because we want to be able to fill news deserts, whether they're in Tony suburbs or distressed cities or rural areas. And this model really works in all of them.
Yeah, I like that too, because like it can be like an absentee owner, like you said, somebody hiring and they can run the franchise for you, or you can be very hands-on. Very cool. You said that you started franchising in, you say 2013? Did I correct that?
Yeah, at the very end of 2013.
Yeah. So And you kind of talked about this earlier, but that truly is a big shift from you being the sole proprietor of all these individual sites to actually having the franchise model. So that's a massive different business model change. How did you come to that decision?
Yeah, so we had been getting all these requests from people to expand to their town, and I couldn't do any more local news sites
No, that
myself
was
because at
really it.
that
And you're
point
just
I was
like, yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah. And then the other thing was I had learned so much doing it from 2008 to 2013. I was like, well, what if I could help save all these people headaches and
yeah,
also make it so much more efficient and so much more easy for them to do this based on what I had learned. And so then I started to put in place all these processes that like I had learned and trainings and things like that. And then I thought also like, what could we take off their plate to make their lives easier. And so since that time, starting then and through now, that's what we're really focused on. We're focused on making, it as easy as possible for a franchisee to be successful, as easy as possible for an advertiser to be successful on the site, and as easy as possible for a reader to get their local news and information. And so we have kind of like here at corporate, we have three different clients, right? We have our franchisees, we have the advertisers, and we have the readers. And it's hard to juggle that, but we have to juggle that on an ongoing basis and make sure we're doing our best to provide the best service and support to all three of our clients.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And then, when you're thinking about creating this franchise model, what and like if the franchise disclosure documents and things of that nature, and putting all the legalities together, did you just dive into that, or were you a lawyer in that area to begin with, or just was it completely new that you had to learn from scratch?
Yeah, no, this stuff is all completely new. I when I was an attorney, I did white collar defense and internal investigations.
Okay.
So very far afield from what I do now.
Yeah.
So we had to hire franchise counsel,
Yeah.
and I know enough from my law days to be able to help our franchisees with minor legal issues and issues of publication and things like that.
Yeah.
But for anything more serious than that, we have outside
Right.
counsel for those kinds of things.
That's awesome. So going back to like the franchisees, what do you think from a marketing perspective makes the most successful franchisee in your niche?
Um, do you mean what they can do for
Yeah,
marketing
yeah,
in their
yeah, yeah. What exactly what they can do, like whether it's going out there, boots on the pavement, knocking on local businesses to get revenue. What's the best approach for those?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I'm doing a webinar on this for the local media association this month, but the topic is basically how can a local publisher market themselves in their community? And one of the things that I really lead with is about giving back. I think giving back is the best marketing that a local news publisher can do. And they can do that in a variety of different ways. From, for example, at TAPinto, we actually have a program called TAPinto Gives Back, where a local franchisee, for example, can partner with a nonprofit in their community and they can provide them advertising and as a way of giving back to that nonprofit that gives so much to the community. But there's a lot of other things that we can do too. For example, media sponsorships with organizations in town where providing them marketing for their event, their 5K to raise money for charity. And in exchange, they name their local Tap Into site as the media sponsor for the event and promote people signing up for our free daily newsletter and things like that. And then there's one of the key things is being there and showing up. So it's a matter of, being at those events, being at the chamber events, being at the business grand openings, being at the high school sporting events, being at the town council meetings. Showing up is like 90% of the battle because if you show up, you're there and people see that. And that's a lot different than a lot of these like hedge funds and these multinational corporations that have bought up local news sites and they own them all over the country and they're being run remotely and there's nobody really on the ground covering local news, developing those local relationships. So for us, that's a really key thing. We also all of our sites have their a free daily newsletter that people can sign up for. They all have Facebook pages. We also support like Instagram, X, TikTok, etc. And we have a partnership with Nextdoor where our top stories, the links to our top stories are in the next door
Yeah.
neighborhoods in the Tap Into
Okay.
communities. So we do a lot in terms of being there, being present, and looking for distribution of content because
Right.
that's one of the biggest things I think in local media today is finding more distribution vehicles for your content.
Now, love it. How let's kind of going that a little further with the emergence of AI, of course, and everybody's using, that for content creation, right? How are you guys, if you are using that at all, interweaving it and helping your franchisees use that for content production, if any?
Yeah, so we don't use it for our news production. We
Right.
use it, we have it built, we have built all of our own technology. And one of the part of that is our content management system. In the content management system that we built, franchisees have the ability to use AI to suggest a headline for an article. They can use AI to suggest a meta description for the article so it
Yep.
ranks more highly on search.
Yep.
Later this year into early next year, we'll be implementing in the content management system so that they can use AI to generate suggestions for social media excerpts and
Yeah.
also for transcribing video of council meetings and things like that into
Yep.
transcripts, because
Yep.
then it's easier to and more quick, more efficient to write a story of the council meeting and things like that. And then our franchisees also use AI on the side of branded content. So not on the news side, but where,
Yeah.
for example, a client might say, or an advertiser might say, "Hey, can you come up with me, with some ideas for a column I'm going to write?" Well, you can use AI to do that and it's
Totally.
make suggestions.
Yeah.
Or, "Hey, I'm really having trouble writing my, advertorial story for the month about myself. Can you help me?" Well, that's a
Mhm.
way that we can also utilize AI without utilizing it for our news reporting.
Yeah. Oh, 100% makes sense. Yeah. You increase your efficiency so much on the other areas, right? Where you can actually spend more time with the news reporting just by those gaining those efficiencies. So that's awesome. Now, this has been a long journey for Tap Into, right? 17 years. If you had to do it all over again, is there anything you would have done earlier? Just kind of like, what would you have done that would have cut the learning curve for you back then or even recently?
Yeah, so I think the biggest item on my list would be that I and it was also it was a brand new thing at the time. I mean, when we started Tap Into, we were the first or second, if there's debate about that, but the first or second all online news site in the state of New Jersey. So at that point, I had gone out to try to get investors, and like people are like, "Are you crazy? People just read the newspaper. They get it in they get it in their mailbox. What are you doing? Whatever." And so I was like too ahead of the curve. But I think that's my biggest regret, because like had we been better capitalized to begin with. One, I would not have had to have, I still own it like 80% of the company, but about 20% of it is through sweat equity from early people that helped that we didn't
Yeah.
have the money to pay
Yeah.
them.
Right.
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 So that's one aspect. And then the other aspect is I think we could have developed the technology and grown a lot more quickly early if we had the capital back then.
Yeah.
And I think that's the number one thing. The number two thing was being more, I guess, I think more knowledgeable about employing people, like who to hire, who not to hire,
Right.
because I had
Yeah.
never hired anyone in my life, and so you learn through that as well in terms of like what you really are looking for, what personalities work the best, etc. And then also similarly on the franchising side, we've come a long way from when we first started franchising in terms of who we look for in a franchisee, what personality traits, what's their background, what are their goals, things like that. And so I wish I knew then what I know now in terms of who we're looking for, because I think we would have been able to bring in stronger franchisees on day one. And second, I think the few missteps we had franchising, we would not have had I had that knowledge then that I have today.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people say one the hiring aspect or people aspect of their biggest regret. Like I continue to hear that over and over when I do these interviews. So that's definitely interesting. When it comes to your own finding, like your own new franchises, you kind of broached that subject there towards the end. What is your all strategy for bringing on new news networks? That's hard to say. New news networks out in the middle of these deserts.
Yeah. Well, so we have, I guess, a number of different strategies. One is I hold a monthly informational webinar for anyone who might be interested. We promote that on our social media channels. We promote that also on Tap Into itself. So that's one aspect. We also do quite a bit of posting on LinkedIn and other social media channels about us as a company, about our franchisees to generate interest. And then every now and then we'll plug, "Hey, we're having this informational webinar," etc.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's another aspect that we do. A third is I attend conferences where oftentimes I'm speaking at conferences and things like that, or just attending conferences where I meet a lot of people and kind of spread the word that way, particularly in the fields of like journalism and publishing and things like that. And then beyond that is a lot of, well, one, our franchisees, they recommend us to other people because they really
Yeah.
love it, which is great.
Yeah.
And we get very high reviews from like Franchise Business Review and others. And so
Right.
that also helps in terms of kind of getting the word out about what we're doing. But I think at the end of the day, it's us, and we're doing a better and better job of this, but and a more cadenced kind of job at this, but telling our own story and
Hmm.
telling it over a long period of time in an interesting way and in a way that's meaningful for people,
Yeah.
because we have all the vehicles to tell stories. Obviously, that's what we do all the time. But until recently, like, we weren't really telling our own story. And we've been doing a lot, in my view, we've been doing a lot better job of that over the last year or so, you know?
It's truly hard to do though. I mean, when it's truly hard to tell your own story, and because you don't want it to sound arrogant or, brag, like you're bragging, right? When you really have a true amazing story that people can connect to, it's hard to share. But once you do, like, sounds like you're seeing the dividends from sharing that story.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And also obviously like podcasts like this really help spread the word too. And I really appreciate, being on today. And I think also like what we're talking about also has kind of learning tips for other people out there. It's not about like, hey, franchise with Tap Into. It's like, hey, here are things that I learned and that I'm still learning that could be beneficial to people who are looking to start a business or are in the early stages of a business or are in the later stages of a business, and they're like still kind of haven't figured out like what they're, how to be
Yeah.
successful with it.
100%. I mean, you provide that value. People are going to obviously think of you as you are the knowledge alert leader in the industry. So they'll come to you for all that information. So that's a great approach for sure. So like you mentioned these webinars, well, I could go down the rabbit hole in so many different areas in this conversation because I think I've started like 10 or 15 websites and monetized them several different ways. And might have to ask you about that after we jump off of here. But like, if people are more interested in starting one of these franchises, you mentioned the webinars, could they just go to tapinto.com, or what's the website URL to get involved?
Yeah, for the franchising website, it's actually starttap.net. And there they'll get information about the franchising, the cost, the webinars. They can even jump on my calendar right there and meet with me one-on-one. Because we always want to give people the opportunity, like if they just want to be on a webinar, great. If they want to just email us, great. If they want to jump on my calendar and actually meet with me one-on-one, great. And that's the thing, is like, no matter how big we get, I'm always committed to that if anybody wants to meet with me and talk with me one-on-one, I want to be able to do that. And even today, I'm still able to do that. And that to me is really important, not just for people that are interested in franchising, but for any of our franchisees. There's no franchisee. And now we have, let's see, we have 99 of them. There's not a single one of them that, cannot jump on my calendar. And I'll also meet with them at nights, weekends, whenever they want to, because like at the end of the day, like I owe our success to them and to the future franchisees as well. And so that to me is really important.
Yeah, for sure. Well said. I guess, you know, since the story is amazing. Like, 17 years ago, you started this and now it's the 99 franchises. What advice do you have to people that are maybe just starting their entrepreneurial journey, things of that nature? What would you say to them?
Yeah, the number one thing is to be persistent. And I think I always say be persistent without being annoying. It's be persistent, because just because people tell you no or say to you that it's not a good idea, that doesn't mean that it's not a good idea. And if you believe in it, you should at least give it a try and be persistent with it and run it to ground. And what I mean by that is, in some cases, it actually might not be a great idea, but you should take a stab at it and give everything you have to it. Always give 110% to it. And then you'll see, okay, does it wind up bearing fruit? Or you know what? Come to the conclusion of, hey, this is actually isn't going to work and I need to pivot. Whether it's making a pivot at that particular company and turning the model on its head or doing something like that, or doing a different kind of pivot of just, no, I'm going to kind of leave and do something else. We had a situation like that early on. And about 2 years into Tap Into, I was doing pretty much all the content, and we had commissioned salespeople. And one day I was with our first advertiser, who's still an advertiser today, 17 years later. And he was like, Mike, like, I don't understand. Why are you out doing the content? I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm a good writer, so that's why I'm doing the content. He's like, you're the best salesperson the company has. Like, you should be out there selling. And I was like, I've never sold anything in my life. What are you talking about? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
then she's like, no, look, I know a good salesperson. You're a good salesperson. Go out and sell. And I turned the model on its head. And I went out and I started selling the advertising, and we brought on people, journalists, to do the content side. And that made a seismic change in the business. One, it brought in a ton of new revenue into the site, into the business. And the content was better and our readership was better, because as good a writer as I am, I'm not as good a writer as a professionally trained journalist. And so that was like a key moment for us. And I'm really glad that I listened to him and I made that pivot. I don't know if we would be in business today had we not made that pivot, because it made such a drastic difference in terms of revenue, and then also in terms of the quality of the journalism and the readership, turning the business on its head at that point.
Yeah, and that's another massive big shift. So there's multiple you shared.
Yeah.
How hard was that for you though? That's a very, if you're doing the writing for a certain previous websites, right? And I was the writer for there as well for the first 250 articles. To let somebody else do some of the writing, that's a hard thing to do, right? And then go out there and sell when you don't think you're a natural salesman. That's pretty tough.
Oh yeah, yeah. And and having never sold anything in my
Yeah,
life, and now the whole company's dependent on me, talking with these businesses about their marketing and all that stuff. So today, like when someone approaches us about franchising, I always say to them, look, like, you don't necessarily have to have, a background in sales or a background in journalism, because I didn't. So I'm not going to hold that against anyone. But if you are going to do the business side, you need to have like a personality for sales. And what I mean by that is somebody who's outgoing, somebody who doesn't take no personally, someone who's persistent without being annoying, like I talked about before. And someone who's personable, somebody that, somebody would like to talk with, somebody who, you'd like to grab a beer with, right? That's somebody who would do a good job on the business side, versus somebody who's like a wallflower, or somebody who kind of views themselves as an employee. That's not a good fit. You want somebody who is entrepreneurial. And then on the journalism side, again, you don't need to be a professional journalist, because I wasn't one, but you need to be able to write well. And then we train you fully on the journalism side. And I do not do the journalism training. I do the sales training, but I don't do the journalism training. We have professional journalists who do the journalism training. But that's kind of like what we look at for today, and making sure both sides of the business are nailed down, both the journalism side and the sales side, whether it's two people doing it together or one person doing it full time. We have some where it's a team of people doing it, and that's fine too, because there's not a one size fits all for a given community for it to be successful.
for sure. That makes sense. What do you guys, and as we kind of get to the end here, what are you guys excited about in the future for Tap Into?
Yeah, so our one of our big projects for next year is we're building our own CRM, which we're going to build
Okay.
into, and we're going to make it part of the content management system. So that's a big thing for us and a big
Yeah.
project. Another thing that we're going to be doing next year, we have it's won first place for innovation by the local media association, and we have a DIY content marketing platform where businesses, nonprofits, the government can submit and pay for various forms of content to be published, event listings, press releases, real estate listings, obituaries, things like that. And we're building onto that next year, a job board, so companies can post jobs, which I think will be really valuable to them, and it will save them a lot of money,
Yeah.
and it will drive more revenue to our franchisees. And then a third thing that we're building next year is surveying software. We're going to build onto the TAPinto site. So we'll be able to do like, readers choice best restaurant, and readers will be able to nominate and vote on best restaurants, and things like that. And so those are our three big projects for next year that we're really excited about. And of course, I'm really excited to cross 100 franchisees, which, if it
Yeah.
doesn't happen this year, will happen next year.
Yeah. Yeah. You got a lot of development hours, what sounds like over there. A lot of development.
Yeah.
Well, cool. And then, Michael, I know you kind of shared where they can go to learn about more about the franchisees, but if somebody's interested in, reaching out to you, is that the best method, or what's the best method to get in contact with you?
Yeah, I mean, kind of I'm an open book. So one, you can link in with me, Michael Shapiro on LinkedIn. I think, Josh, you and I linked in
Yeah.
earlier today.
Yeah.
People can email me, which is at mshapiro@tapinto.net. And then also, obviously, through Start Tap. And then if there's existing publishers that are just interested in being on our tech stack, that's hyperlocalnewsnetwork.com.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate you being on the podcast today. This was truly entertaining.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. All right, folks, that's a wrap. Thanks for listening to Making Big Shifts from Marketing Reboot, where we help business leaders focus on what actually matters in their marketing. Join us next week, and we'll talk to you then.
Thank you for listening to Making Big Shifts. Like, share, and follow for more. Join us next time on Making Big Shifts, presented by Marketing Reboot.